guys, I'm D-Mac from NBA Fantasy Bible, and along with me is Kayla Fonte, and together we're Between Two Hoops. Kayla, how are you going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing really well. This is episode 2 of 3 that we're filming today. This one being ads, drops, holds, and streamers. Shall we get straight into it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it indeed. So, bit of a list with our ads, and of course, a lot of these guys are probably already taken in your leagues, but again, we always implore you that have a look at your league, and there could be a nice diamond in the rough. There could be something still available on your waiver wire. So go check it out. But we'll discuss a lot of these guys in a fair bit of detail coming up. But starting out with Tari Eason, for me, he's a must-add guy. He's close to a top 50 guy in 9-cat at the moment. We'll do a bit more of a deep dive very shortly, but only 32% rostered on Yahoo.
Yeah, and he has looked really good. My main concern, especially with Amen Thompson as well, is just the minutes. But I think even in their bench role, they've still been carving out a really good role for themselves, and they're going to get more minutes compared to Reed Shepherd or Whitmore, for example.
Absolutely, and there's a fair bit of talk around possibly having Tari Eason start ahead of Jabari Smith at power forward, which is pretty crazy. You think about, I think they were drafted in the same draft class as well, and Jabari Smith was number 2 draft pick, so highly credentialed. But Tari Eason at the moment is just playing out of his mind, and yeah, it's fantastic to watch right now. Next one's Brandon Boston. So we know about the plethora of injuries that the Pelicans have at the moment, and Brandon Boston's looked really solid in the last couple of games.
Yeah, and that's basically what it comes down to. When there's so many injuries to your star players, guys like Brandon Boston Jr. will step up, and he's been providing great value. I believe most of their stars are still out for a couple of weeks, so you're getting a little bit more long-term value with Boston.
Keep in mind that Trey Murphy III is slated to come back today, which is awesome. I do have him in a couple of spots, so I'm very excited about that. Bear in mind, he's not on this list because he's already highly rostered, but if for whatever reason he is available on your or in your league, make sure you pick him up. But Brandon Boston, I'm still picking him up. I'd love to see where it goes. I don't think Trey Murphy's going to play huge minutes straight off the bat. So I'd expect that Brandon Boston still has a pretty prominent role over the next couple of games at least. So really nice fill in for now. And he's, still only 24% rostered as well. So I think that can come up. Next one's DeAnthony Melton. So he had a really nice game in the last one. So this was yesterday. And the word is from Steve Kerr that he will be remaining in the starting lineup, which is fantastic for him. Not so fantastic for guys like Brandon Pajemski, to a lesser extent, Jonathan Kuminga. Kuminga's still a very solid hold right now. And we'll get into our drops, but I think Pajemski is definitely a drop there. But DeAnthony Melton is a solid ad for me.
Yeah, and it's surprising that he was inserted into the starting lineup. I just want to see if it sticks because I know that Kerr will sometimes shake up that lineup, even though he said that it's going to be, I think, for the rest of the season, I believe he said, or something like that, or long term. But anyways, yeah, he's a good 3-and-D guy, so the steals is especially where he stands out. He can give you some threes, points as well.
Yeah, and anyone that's been playing category leagues for any number of years knows the per minute fantasy upside of DeAnthony Melton as well. So yeah, that's great news. And if he's in the starting lineup, he has to be added in 12s and probably even 10s for that matter. But yeah, definitely in 12s in my opinion. Next one's Kevin Huerter. He's been playing well, but it sometimes is a little bit inconsistent. But there is word that Malik Monk is also injured. I think he may be day-to-day, so we'll see what the timeline is on Malik Monk. But if he is sidelined, I think Kevin Huerter is a very, very nice pickup.
Yeah, the minutes will definitely go up for him. And yeah, he is inconsistent, but he could provide in the offensive categories, especially with 3-point shooting.
Yeah. Next one's Kayshawn George. Looked really good for the young Washington Wizards, and he's starting, which is fantastic to see. So he's starting alongside of Alex Sarr now. And I think that'll continue. Another game today on the back-to-back. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, for me, I think he's a must-roster guy.
Yeah, especially while Kyle Kuzma is out for a little bit longer as well.
Yeah, and our other show that we just had, talking about our sell highs and buy lows, we talked about Bilal Coulibaly as a sell high. And that, again, that's related to Kyle Kuzma being out. But Kayshawn George has to be rostered whilst Kyle Kuzma is sidelined as well.
Mhm.
JRE, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, again related to the Pelicans and just their plethora of injuries right now, but he's starting, so I think he's a solid add.
Yeah, especially with Zion out indefinitely. The value is there and the minutes are there as well.
Yeah, he's a pretty efficient guy. He's not going to set the world on fire, but yeah, if you're looking for some solid big man stats, I think he can provide those. Keldon Johnson, we know that Jeremy Sohan's out for a while. We don't know the exact timeline, but he will be out for quite some time. So I think Keldon Johnson's a nice grab here.
Yeah, and he's honestly looked pretty good too, and a lot of people are already rushing to add him.
Yeah, I think some people are a little bit hesitant just because Devin Vassell is also back, but I think Keldon
Mhm.
Johnson still has his place on a 12-team roster.
Yeah, I think the minutes are still going to be there too, especially when like Sohan was one of the starters, right? So he was seeing significant minutes, so that opens up a lot for Keldon Johnson and some other guys too.
Yeah, some were thinking that Julian Champagny would be the preferred option, but for me, it was Keldon Johnson, and it's
Mhm.
proven that way in the last couple of games. So that's good to see. Ayo Dosunmu, solid without being spectacular, but solid is sometimes all that you need in 12s, and he has been solid.
Yeah, definitely. And even in deeper leagues too, he's someone who you definitely got to hold on to. And Lonzo Ball is also out for a while with a wrist injury, so he's getting some extra minutes there.
Yep, and we often talk about Zach LaVine and those trade rumors as well, and not that it's really read its head up sometime recently, but it's always in the back of your mind because if Levine is traded, then Ayo Dosunmu gets a nice jump here. But um, even without that, I think he's still solid in 12s. Goga Badadze, he's looked fantastic whilst Wendell Carter Jr. has been sidelined. But again, that's a injury stream. Once Wendell Carter Jr. is back, I think he'll start and Goga Badadze will be relegated back to the bench. But in the meantime, I think he's a very nice play.
Yeah, definitely. And especially like you always like to call it, it's a three-headed monster at center for the Magic, and it's hard to have value when all three of them are healthy. But as long as Carter Jr. is out, he's a great streamer.
Yeah, and Goga Badadze is the preferred option over Mo Wagner, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Goga gets you those blocks that are sometimes difficult to grab off the wire, but Mo, of course, is more for your points. But Goga, for me, is the preferred option. Kyle Lowry and Jared McCain. We know that Philly don't have Tyrese Maxey for probably next week or two. So I think these guys can fill in admirably at the guard position. Of course, Embiid is due to return this week as well, so keep that in mind, but it shouldn't impact their time at the guard positions.
Yeah, I think they're still gonna get solid runtime. But Jared McCain especially has looked really impressive. In the past 2 games, he's been great offensively, and he's a rookie too. So I think they can afford to give him a couple more minutes over old man Lowry.
Yeah, so that's more a speculative ad, and we'll see what happens when everyone is back. I think these guys will be relegated back to bench roles quite easily once
Yep.
their superstars are all back on court. But in the meantime, I think they are solid to be played. Royce O'Neal, we haven't had our injuries show just yet, but of course we'll speak about Kevin Durant in a great amount of detail. But in the meantime, Royce O'Neal needs to be added.
Yeah, I think Durant is sidelined for at least 2 weeks, so that's a long-term ad for O'Neal, and he's even looked solid off the bench too. So with the increased minutes, I think he'll look even better.
He has, and he's done a little bit of that whilst Bradley Beal's been sidelined. But Royce O'Neal, without Kevin Durant, had a bit of a poor game yesterday, but didn't shoot the ball well. And I expect better from Royce O'Neal moving forward. So I think for me, very good ad right now. Lou Dort, he's shooting the ball really well. He's playing well. Of course, we heard about Chet Holmgren overnight. So I think that just affords the likes of Lou Dort more time as well. So I think he has to be added right now.
I think so too, and he could be a little inconsistent at times, but just because they suffered that huge injury, they're gonna have to rely on him a lot more.
I'm somewhat surprised he's only 24% rostered because I know that he was added pretty heavily a couple of weeks ago just because he was putting up some really good offensive games. And we know that he's a defensive maestro, real um, point of attack on defense. Him and Alex Caruso, real defensive masters there. But Lou Dort has looked really solid. So 24%, I'm surprised it's that low, but I expect that to increase pretty dramatically over the next couple of weeks.
Mm.
Peyton Watson was a very popular ad a few few days ago when Aaron Gordon was deemed injured. He's going to be out for quite some time. Peyton Watson, of course, has that blocks upside, but general defensive nous as well. So I think he has to be had in situations where you need those defensive stats.
I think so too, especially with Gordon out for a little while. He's a good streamer for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and he's even put up some nice numbers offensively as well. I think he's grabbed 16 points the last 2 games as well. So it's not just the blocks that you're grabbing him for. He's nice with the steals, but also decent efficiency from the field. We spoke about Benedict Mathurin on our Sell High show, Buy Low and Sell High, but we were talking about him as our Sell High. He's looked fantastic, and for whatever reason, he is available, and he is only rostered in 46% of leagues, which is far too low. Go and grab him because he's on an absolute tear right now.
Yeah, especially with all the injuries too. I mean, this production isn't going to last for a long period of time, but while he has that opportunity, I think he's going to continue to put up those great stats.
Yep. Aaron Naismith, Andrew Nempard, they're both out for some time. Obi Toppin missed the last game as well. So Benedict Mathurin just looks really solid and, yeah, unsustainable shooting splits right now. But again, he's on fire, so you got to grab him. One, again, that is far too low, but Jose Alvarado, he was a pickup for us a week and a half ago, but he's looked really good and he hasn't disappointed so far.
Yeah, I mean, their backcourt is really deplenished right now, so he's leading it in that area.
Yeah, just go and grab him because he's going to be a nice play up until the point where DeJounte and CJ McCollum do return. Stephon Castle, or Castle, as you North Americans like to say, Stephon Castle. I think he's a nice play. Again, nothing spectacular, but he does give you some nice point guard stats.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising too because he was on our drops list last week. The production just wasn't there, but over the past couple of games, he's actually looked pretty solid. So it's definitely someone to monitor as well, just to see how this production is affected with Vassell not returning. But in the meantime, go pick him up. He's pretty available.
Next one, why is Dyson Daniels only 64%? Now, the reason why he's on this list is pretty much just because of you. You love him. He's your NBA boyfriend, but 64% needs to be closer to 99 to 100%. Leading the league in steals by quite some way, leading the league in deflections by quite some way, putting up some top 59 cat numbers at the moment, just not just based on steals, but a lot of it is based on steals.
Oh my god, yeah, the steals have been crazy. I mean, there was one game where he had 7. What's great about him is that he's an amazing defensive player, and now on the Hawks, he has that huge offensive opportunity as well. And he's definitely made solid improvements to his offensive game, so it's a breakout year for him. I want to see 100% rostered by the next show.
Yeah, for those that have been following us for quite some time, we spoke about him in the off season and again in preseason and again in week 1, just saying he's such a nice compliment to Trae Young. I think we said that over and over again, and particularly Bogdan Bogdanovic, also out injured. And we heard that Dyson Daniels was starting. We were like, this is go time. But for him to only be 64% rostered at the moment, that's a bit of a travesty. So make sure that that's changed if he's not already rostered. But I'm getting a lot of comments on YouTube saying, my guy, he's already rostered. Why is he on the ads list? Well, he's not rostered everywhere. So just make sure that he is. Zachary Rissochet, the rookie from France, he looked really good, but keep in mind that DeAndre Hunter is out, and he has been out for quite some time, probably the last 6 or 7 games from my recollection.
Yeah, and I did notice that his roster percentage was going down a little bit, which is surprising given that he's giving you better value right now, especially with Hunter out. I think he's a must-add as long as Hunter is sidelined. And they're dealing with other injuries as well with Bogdanovic.
Yeah, and I want to see how it all plays out even when Hunter is there, because I've got a feeling that Rissochet will start even with Hunter there. It may not happen straight away. We'll see what happens. I think the Hawks organization like Hunter, but Rissochet went number 1. So you would expect your number 1 draft pick overall to start at some stage. So I'd still be picking him up and just see where it goes when everyone is healthy. Similar to Dyson Daniels, but Alex Sarr just has to be rostered, and only 51%. We know that he's quite raw, but I think he's going to give you top 50 numbers for the rest of the season. In 9 cat, I should say.
Yeah, 9 cat, yeah. I think, the potential is definitely there, and it's the same with all these wizards that are listed here. Sarah Coulibaly, Carrington, they're all looking fantastic right now, and yeah, there are a couple of injuries to the team, but this is a Washington Wizards team that can afford to give their young guy minutes, and they're gonna continue to do so for the rest of the season.
Yeah, you mentioned Koulibaly, Bob Carrington as well. They've all looked very solid. Kyle Kuzma, we spoke about earlier, being injured. So, yeah, just make sure they are added. And yes, again, see where it goes. A young team, not playing for a great deal apart from draft picks. So, yeah, let it play out and reap the benefits. Peyton Pritchard, we spoke about him on our Sell High show, but Peyton Pritchard's shooting the lights out. Only 44% rostered. That's got to change, particularly in nine cats.
Yeah, he's been looking great, and not so much in points leagues, but in categories, he's been fantastic.
Yeah, another one in category leagues that's dominating right now. It's Scottie Pippen Jr. Ja Morant is out for a little bit of time. So Scottie Pippen, he was rosterable in my opinion, even with Ja Morant
Mhm.
healthy. Scottie Pippen was putting up some insane assist numbers coming off the bench, but yeah, he's now got the full runway now that Ja Morant's sidelined for a little bit of time.
Yeah, I actually did pick him up while the team was still healthy, and he looked
Mm.
fantastic. And I mean, Smart's out, Bain and Morant as well. I mean, that's a lot of injuries to star players in your backcourt. So, yeah, the runway is huge for him.
Yep, grab Scottie Pippen. It's great to see. And I think I saw that his dad posted on Twitter that first father son duo to get triple double. So that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Dante Aldama. Now, sort of forgotten about him, but 52% rostered. And he's just been quietly putting up some great numbers.
Yeah, I think a lot of the attention has been on Pippen. Yeah, but Aldama's been great. Even Jalen Wells as well. There's so many injuries on this team that it's allowing guys like this to step up.
Yeah, for me, Wells is more a streamer, but I think right
Mhm.
now there's certain leagues, certain spots that you can just add him and see where it goes for the next few weeks anyway. Um, O'Shea Abaji. Now he's really looked good for Toronto, and that didn't really change a great deal, even with the return of Emmanuel quickly.
Yeah, I think his value is more going to be impacted when Scotty Barnes returns. But we're
Mhm.
still a little while away from that. So in the meantime, pick him up.
Yeah, we spoke about it last week where we knew that Emmanuel Quickly's return would impact Davion Mitchell, and we'll get to our drops very shortly. But it hasn't impacted Abaji. It has impacted Dick a little bit. And we'll get into our holds in a minute, but we will be holding our Dick right now. Now, Shaden Sharp, only 25% rostered. He came back from injury during week 3. Quickly picked up by a lot of people, but then quickly dropped as well just because he had 2 quieter games. Just bear in mind that he's ramping up his time. And I think in certain situations and certain punt builds as well, I think he's a fantastic ad.
I think so too. And a lot of it comes down to having patience with these guys who are ramping up from injuries. I think the value will come. You just have to wait.
Yeah, and his return, in my opinion, has actually impacted Scoot Henderson. It's sad to see, and he's actually on our drops list, which we'll get to shortly. And I had high hopes for Scoot, but it hasn't really panned out the way we would have liked. Again, it's something that we monitor. We continue to monitor. He's got that pedigree, but keep an eye out for the entire Portland team moving forward. Now, let's deep dive into Tari Eason. Fantastic 9 cat guy. Less important or less valuable, I should say, in a points league situation. So this one's looking at the 59th ranked player in 9cat. So thank you again to hashtag basketball for these rankings. But in points league or standard points leagues, I should say, standard scores, 105th. So borderline 12 teams. So he's sort of on the cusp. But yeah, you'd expect that he should be added already. But if he's not in categories, go and add him because look at some of these numbers. Not a huge amount of minutes, but he's putting up some nice numbers. Rebounds, steals is elite, blocks as well, and field goal percentage. Even though it's not on huge volume, it's still very valuable to see it above 50%.
Yeah, especially if he eventually gets that starting role too. That would be significant for him. But even look at the steals and blocks. That's almost 3 stocks per game. So he's really giving you those defensive stats, rebounds, and he's carving out a role for himself offensively as well.
Yeah, look, it's not Dyson Daniels' still numbers, but it's not
Mhm.
that far off. 1.8. I think Dyson Daniels is at 3 at the moment, but yeah, he's putting it together across the board. So for us, Tari Eason has to be added in category leagues. Now we get to our holds, and I said we would be holding our Dicks. So Grady Dick for me is still a hold. Toronto is still banged up. They still have a few injuries, but I think he has to be held just to see where it is at. For me, he was always a little bit one-dimensional, and now that Emmanuel Quickly's returned, RJ Barrett's back as well, so it has impacted on Grady Dick, but I still think he's worthy of a 12-team roster spot.
I think so too. I hope that a lot of you were able to sell high on him before quickly returned, because obviously this having an impact on his value. But you're right in the sense that he is a one-dimensional player, very points oriented. Will give you some threes, maybe a couple of steals here and there. But outside of that, he's not the most versatile. But like you mentioned as well, Scotty Barnes is still injured. And even after that too, I kind of want to see how his role shapes up to be. I think he's going to still get quite a bit of opportunities. I just see his ranking coming down with everyone healthy.
Yeah, we said last week on our buy low, sell high show to sell your Dicks because, yeah, with the returning stars as well, his usage was always going to come down. But right now, he's still a hold right now. Alex Caruso, so he was on our drops list last week. So how things quickly change, and this has happened overnight. So Caruso was a nice streaming guy for steals, of course. So I've got him in a couple of spots, and I held him because it's sometimes difficult to get those steals. Now with the news of Chet Holmgren going down, I think this affords the likes of Alex Caruso and Lou Dort that we mentioned earlier a little bit more playing time and potentially just more usage and more shooting and more points. So I think Caruso is not just that still streamer, and for me, he's still a hold.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I kept him in some of my deeper leagues, but I think he has an opportunity here to get a little bit more defensive stats. He hasn't really been um, overwhelming in those categories, but now when you have someone like Chet going down with an injury for at least 3 months, I mean, there's a lot of more opportunities and minutes to go around, especially for Caruso, who's very defensive minded.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that defense plays out because do the guys like Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, are they more inclined to sit back, be a little bit more, I'll say guarded, pardon the pun, knowing that a rim protector like Chet is no longer behind them to protect them? So are they less likely to go for their steals? So not sure how that's going to play out, but it'll be interesting viewing nonetheless. But I think, yeah, like we said, Alex Caruso is still a hold in 12-team category leagues, less so in points leagues.
Mhm.
Next two, and these guys are frustrating the hell out of me, but Onyeka Okongwu, he was my guy coming in, and it looked awesome in the first week. Amazing. I was almost doing a home run, but yeah, it's really died off in the last couple of weeks to the point where I said I wasn't going to say this, but I did actually drop him in one of my leagues, and I've got him in quite a few others, so it's okay. It's all right, but I was looking for the W yesterday, so I did stream him out. I sort of regret it because I know that he'll probably have a monster game, probably in the next one. So we'll see how that plays out. But for me, I think Okongwu is still a hold, and I still think Capella still has value in 12s as well.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, especially depending on your league, right? But yeah, I do want to hold these two guys, especially with just all the uncertainty around potential trades and things like that. So until we get a clearer picture of what's going on, I don't really want to make any moves just yet.
Agreed. Another one, Andrew Wiggins. He had a couple of down games, but then he had a fantastic game yesterday. Still sounds like they're just finalizing or tinkering with that starting lineup. But Andrew Wiggins, for me, has to be held in 12s.
I think so too, and he's overall looked a lot better than he did last year. So I hold him and ride it out.
Yeah, I think Clay not being there just means that he has to do more offensively, and that hasn't come from Podziemski that we'd expected this season. So Andrew Wiggins has taken it upon himself to be a little bit more offensive minded, which is great for him and his value. Amen Thompson, one of my guys come into this season. It hasn't taken off like I'd expected, but he's not a drop. He's a solid hold. And you can just see, if you watch some of these Houston games, you can see that Amen is getting some more minutes and they're closing some of the closing lineups with Amen and with Tari as well. It's really interesting to see some of that dynamic as well. And it's impacting the likes of Alperen Sengun to the point where um, I'm not worried about Shengun's value, but it's also nice to see that Amen's getting a little bit more run at certain times.
Yeah, and it's great that he has that kind of potential too. He could provide in limited minutes, but like you said, we haven't really been wowed by him just yet, and we did see flashes of that last season. I'm kind of changing my perspective a bit on Amen right now. I would prefer to hold him. I think in shallower leagues, if he is your worst player, I probably would drop him for that hot waiver wire pickup, especially if they're going to have long term value. But hold in standard leagues and deeper, especially.
Question for you: who would you rather, Amen or his teammate Tari Eason?
I kind of like Eason a little bit more right now, especially with the possibility that he could move into the starting lineup. I think that would do wonders for his minutes and value.
Hmm.
I'm going to ask you that question though now.
Hmm. I'd still, yeah. I should be back in Amen Thompson, but Tari's looked awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
hence why we opened with Tari Eason at the moment. And the possibility of him starting is just really mouthwatering. I don't know if that happens anytime soon, but geez, yeah. Even looking at some Houston Twitter stuff, a lot of people are just sort of crying out for Tari to start ahead of Jabari, which is interesting. I'd love to see that for Amen and just start ahead of Dylan Brooks, to be honest. And I think that's probably more
Mhm.
realistic, but yeah, Brooks has his place on that team as well.
Yeah.
Moving forward, Drew Holiday. A lot of people are saying he is a drop in 12
Mhm.
teamers. For me, I think he still needs to be held.
I don't think so. He's probably just going through like a rough patch, right? I mean, it happens to a lot of players, especially stars. Yeah, he's not someone I would drop just because of his upside. Yeah, he's ranked kind of low right now, but I mean, we all know what he's capable of, even on a stacked Boston Celtics team, right? He can give you those defensive stats. And yeah, you just got to ride it out. Definitely don't drop.
And he had a really good game yesterday. Must have been a revenge game against his old team in the Bucks as well. So that was good to see him getting back to a little bit more form. And those steals will come as well. And they're somewhat lacking at the moment. So I think that you just bide your time, and I think it'll be fine for Drew Holiday. Bobby Portis is still a hold, in my opinion. And again, Brooke Lopez as well is a hold. And that may seem weird because I was quite low on Brooke Lopez. But if you're needing those blocks, he's still providing some really nice value with blocks. The rest of his game is just nowhere near where it needs to be. But he's still a back end guy in 12-team category leagues. Points leagues, I'm okay for you to drop. I don't think there's any upside there. But when you're looking for blocks, and again, I said it before, it's not always that easy to find guys on the waiver wire that can get you those blocks. Brooke Lopez, I think, still needs to be held in 12-team category leagues.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It's just the elite block numbers that he can provide. Even if ever Giannis misses some time, Portis and Lopez are two guys who really step up.
Yep. And when I said in the preseason that I was low on him, it didn't mean that I didn't think he was a 12-team guy. It just meant I didn't want to be drafting him inside the top 80. That's all. D'Angelo Russell, we spoke about him on our buy low show, but D'Angelo Russell is still a solid hold, and he did have a nice game yesterday. Still not cracking 30 minutes consistently. I think playing 27, 28 minutes here and there, but for me, he's still a really solid hold.
Yeah, especially with the Lakers having a lot of injury-prone guys. Davis is already dealing with an eye injury too, so he could be inserted into the starting lineup. Yeah, I'm not rushing to drop him or anything. I would definitely hold. He's actually one of my favorites to draft in point leagues.
Oh, there you go. There we go. Jonas Valanciunas, bad game yesterday, but yeah, he's just been his efficient self. A little bit inconsistent with the rebounds, and I actually had him. I was hoping that he'd get me some rebounds in one of my leagues, and I only just won that 6-5 and 11 cat league, and I was expecting more because it has offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds, and he was quite poor in the last game. But I'm holding for now, but it could actually go down south. It could be a drop situation at this stage, and we used to use the term droop. Guys that
Mhm.
are heading towards a drop. So he could be one of our droops at the moment, but for now, I'm still holding him.
Yeah, he's a good droop for sure. But it's definitely just a situation to monitor right now.
Yep. Another one in that category is Wendell Carter Jr. Slightly different. He's been sidelined with the injury the last few games. Goga Badadze's been a really nice fill-in, but Wendell Carter Jr., I think he can still retain back-end 12-team value in a category league.
Yeah, I think so too. Even in points leagues, he's decent. Um, yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one because he is very injury prone. So I expect another one to come at some point this year, but I would still hold on if he can.
Yeah, if you've got the free IL slot, then you just put him in there and yeah, you just await his return. If not, if you don't have the IL, yeah, maybe it is a difficult hold in this
Mhm.
situation just because it's not clear on when he will return. I'm hoping it will be in the next couple of games. So I'm willing to hold at this stage, but if we do get a timeline that's greater than a week, I'm okay to move off him because, like I said, he's more a back end guy and you can always stream that slot for a lot more value moving forward. All right, let's get in. That's our holds. Let's get into our drops. Now, I'll preface this by saying, and I said this the last couple of weeks, these are drops in 12 teamers, but then they can also be streamers as well, depending on the situation. But
Mhm.
we open with Jabari Smith Jr. Now, this is a little bit controversial, and he could be on our holds list quite easily, but I'm not wanting to be a little bit controversial, but I think that if you were to drop him, you wouldn't really regret it. You wouldn't be looking back in a few weeks' time going, oh man, I should not have dropped Jabari Smith because I just don't think he's got that upside with the talent that he's got behind him.
Yeah, and that's the main thing, especially with his starting job in Jeopardy. I mean, that's not really a good sign. You could hold if you can, but in a shallower league, I would probably lean towards dropping.
Yeah, I should have had the injury tag next to Marcus Smart, but I think you don't need to hold on to Marcus Smart anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with when Morant and Bane are healthy. I mean, his numbers were down.
Yep. Next one's Al Horford. If this was Roto, he's a clear hold for me. I think he's well inside the top 90. I think he's closer to the top 80, to be honest, in a nine cat situation. But in a head to head where you know that he will be missing one leg of a back to back, and he's just not really providing you with that punch that you need in head to head situations, I'm okay for him to be a drop in 12s and more treated as a streamer.
Yeah, exactly. Same with me. Like he's just a streamer. Especially like missing out the back to backs really gets you.
Yeah. Now, Jonathan Isaac, he was very popular a couple of weeks ago when Bankero went down. Heaps of people picked him up expecting his minutes to rise, and it hasn't really happened that way.
Yeah, it's also because I think he's very injury prone too. You want to be careful with him. I don't think the minutes are ever gonna be really high in the next couple of weeks, even with Bankero injured. And when you're playing limited minutes, I mean, there's only so much production you could provide.
Yep. Next one's Jaime Hackers. A lot of people love him. Look, Jimmy Butler missed the last time. Hackers was just coming back himself as well. So he didn't have the greatest game as a streamer. But if Butler does continue to miss, perhaps Jaime has more value there. But he's not a must hold guy in 12 teams.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could use him as a streaming option, but you don't really have to hold on to him for that.
Yep. Terrence Mann, he's still on this list. I think this is carryover from previous weeks, but he's an easy drop from the Clippers. No need to hold him there. Mike Conley, another controversial one. And again, similar to Al Horford, old guy, probably more suited to Roto. But Mike Conley's just been really inconsistent. He's had games where he's done absolutely nothing. And then he's had games where it's like, wow, it's just Mike Conley of old. And for that matter, I don't think I need to hold him in a head to head situation.
I've only held him in really deep leagues just because, like, I mean, there's not very many options on the waiver wire. But in standard leagues, I would feel comfortable moving on, especially to pick up someone who's been performing a lot better on the waivers.
Yeah, I'm sounding like I'm contradicting myself. I do have him in a couple of spots, but that is because I have built a really guard dependent team on that one. And it's a guard and efficiency, and I think even a assist to turnover category in one league as well. So I've really held him just because he does have that value in those situations. Noah Clowney, he's been on this list again, so make sure that he is dropped. But again, the reason why he's on this list is just keep an eye on him, just down the stretch. Just we're going to keep talking about him just a little bit because just keep an eye out. Just later on in the season, he could be a silly season winner. Just keep that in the back of your minds. Scoot Henderson, disappointing. Shaden Sharp's return, and that's really impacted Scoot Henderson.
Yeah, especially when he's coming off the bench too. I mean, his assists have looked okay. This is a bit of a hard one because I really like Scoot, but I would drop him if you needed to.
Yep. Trey Mann's another one. Looked really
Mhm.
good as the fill-in for Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller's now returned, and we're hoping that Trey Mann would still get some nice usage, get some good points with the absence of Miles Bridges, but it hasn't worked out that way either.
Yeah, it hasn't really been there. But he's a player I would keep an eye on just because we've seen what he can do when there's a lot of injuries.
Yeah. And I'm loving seeing those comparisons with Allen Iverson. It's a bit of a throwback to a few years ago. But yeah, pretty cool there, but not so cool in a 12-team situation.
Yep.
Ben Simmons, again, some of those numbers look okay. It looks tasty, but it's inconsistent, and you know that he's going to miss games as well.
Yeah, it's really hard to roster him, and I think he's about like 28% rostered still, especially when he's missing games here and there. His stats aren't really eye popping. He can give you something in the main categories, but I don't think he's worth the risk.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Now, some of these next ones are real easy ones. They're maybe even less than streamer worthy, but can be streamed in certain situations. Gary Trent Jr. Not sure why I've got Toronto next to his name because he hasn't played for them in a while. But Gary Trent Jr. doesn't need to be on a 12-teamer. Aaron
Mm.
Neesmith is currently injured at the moment. Same goes for Andrew Nembhard. They don't need to be in 12-teamers at the moment. And Tamani Kamara, again, he's been impacted by the return of just a couple of guys for the Trailblazers.
Yeah, it's sad too because a lot of people were rushing to pick him up because he looked really promising in that starting spot. But now with the team getting healthy, I mean, the value is just not there.
It's not there for 12s, but yeah, nice streaming for him and maybe even 14s. I think he's a rosterable guy in 14s. Reed Shepherd's just on here because he's still highly rostered in a lot of
Mm.
leagues, so he doesn't need to be held in 12s at all. Kelly Oubre, now we spoke about him being a really nice fill-in, but now that the Philadelphia 76ers are getting somewhat healthier, don't think he needs to be held, and it's just sort of been shown in the last few games, even since PG has returned. I don't think he's 12-team worthy.
I don't think so either. He's definitely someone who I would look to stream if Paul George misses time, especially with back to backs.
Davion Mitchell, we spoke about Manuel quickly returning, and that had a direct correlation with Davion Mitchell really taking a step back. So he doesn't need to be held anymore in 12s, but again, he can be streamed in certain situations where there's not other better options right now. But yeah, it does not need to be held at all in 12s. Now, we've got a
Mhm.
couple of warriors here, Trace Jackson Davis and Brandon Pajemski. We had high hopes for both of these guys. Hasn't played out that way at all.
Yeah, it's been really disappointing. I don't think I have Pajemski really rostered in any of my leagues, but he's a draw for me. I mean, especially with the news of the new starting lineup. It's really gonna hurt his value even more. And with Jackson Davis, I'm losing my voice. I've been trying to hold out, but I mean the value just hasn't been there. Maybe down the stretch potentially, if they're far off from the playoffs. But aside from that, I think you gotta let him go.
Yeah, it's been really disappointing. Probably more so for Trace Jackson Davis. I was expecting some big things. He was starting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just don't know why a guy like him can't be successful. He wasn't a high draft pick, so and he's not as young as a lot of people think he is. Perhaps
Mhm.
that's just who he is, and the upside's not there. And finally, Jeremy Sohan. I've held him in a couple of leagues only because I've just put him into IL. But he could be out for quite some time, and if that's the
Mhm.
case, then he doesn't need to be held.
Yeah, because he is getting surgery too, so that's a bit more of a longer term thing. If you can afford to stash him, I probably would, but if you can't, then I would drop him.
Yeah, I'm stashing only until I get the next round of injuries, which is probably just a few
It's
hours
on its way
away.
this week.
It's on its way, and probably in the next couple of minutes, to be honest. Okay, deeper dive on Jabari Smith. Probably a little bit harsh on him, but look at those rankings: 189th in 9K. And again, rankings aren't everything, but it's a metric. It's a nice indicator on how a guy is going, and he's just not giving us enough value. In points leagues, 159th as well.
Mhm.
So that's, for me, that's not a must roster guy in 12s. So the minutes are still okay. High 28, close to 29 minutes. That's solid. 11 points, it's average. 3 pointers, 1.2 3 pointers per game. 6.7 rebounds is nice. But look at some of these other numbers: zero point 0.8 assists, zero point 0.4 steals. And the most disappointing for me of all of these are the blocks numbers. Half a block a game from someone who came out of college that was renowned for his block rate. Half a block's not doing it for me. The field goals was always going to be an issue from day dot as a rookie. Low 40%, but 41.2%. So that's on par with what he's generally done all his career. but it's still disappointing to see from a big guy. And I know he takes a lot of three balls, but 41.2% for someone who's only hitting 1.2 threes is not it for me. Free throws are solid for a big guy as well. But yeah, generally just a guy that's not popping for you in a head-to-head situation, and again, not providing the NICAT value that we want from someone who probably was taken around that maybe 8th or ninth round, probably 8th round in drafts.
Yeah, I got him in one of my leagues at about the ninth round, so this is definitely disappointing to see. But he's just not giving you what you need. I mean, you kind of went through it already, but there's not really much that pops out here, especially the blocks. That's especially disappointing. And I don't really see his value turning around much as the season progresses, too. And like we mentioned, especially with his starting job in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think his role is just yeah, it's not really well defined. It's a funny one because Şengün is not a great rim protector. You would have thought Jabari Smith would have been someone who would be able to cover for him as well. Hasn't really played out that way. And then you see guys where there's that constant comparison between him and Tari Eason as well. So maybe that's playing on his confidence. But yeah, disappointing nonetheless. Now we get to our streamers. Now it's a massive list, so we're not going to go through every single one, but we're just going to show you this list, have a look through. I think it's pretty common knowledge that all of these guys for us are not necessarily 12-team guys, but more streamers. And a lot of them have value because of injuries. Starting at the top with Isaiah Stewart, he started and played a pretty nice game in Jalen Duren's absence. If that absence continues, or he does get more ankle issues throughout the season, I think Isaiah Stewart is a nice stream, but streaming is the extent of it. He's not a must roster guy in 12s. So if you miss out on him, it's okay, but he is a nice option when it comes to good rebounds, essentially.
Yeah, he's definitely not an ad, and this is kind of the case with Grant Williams as well. Nick Richards is out. Mark Williams is also out with no clear return date. So Grant Williams has really stepped up in the front court, but by no means do you have to must roster him when the team is fully healthy.
Yep. And I'll just take you through some of the highlighted ones. I wanted to highlight J Huff. Now, we think of him as a back end guy, maybe a 14 teamer, but did you know, Kayla? Maybe you did because I told you earlier, but he's in the top 50 of 9cat. Can you believe that? I think he's 48th, ranked 48th. That is unbelievable. I know he's had two monster games in terms of blocks the last two games, but yeah, top 50 guy. He was on a two-way contract probably about 2 weeks ago. I think I mentioned this earlier, but I picked him up in a 30-man dynasty league off the waiver wire probably 2 months ago. Wasn't doing anything. No one knew about him really, so I just grabbed him because I knew that he was probably one of these better two-way guys at the time, him and Scottie Pippen Jr., and they're both really playing fantastic basketball right now on full contracts.
Yeah, it's crazy. When you told me that, I think like my jaw dropped to the floor. Like I was expecting maybe like top 80-ish. I mean, because he's
Mm,
had some really impressive games. But it's
yeah.
interesting to note though that when I was looking at my points leagues teams, his ranking is closer to 100. So he's definitely more valuable in the category leagues, and he's a great streamer when there's injuries.
Yeah, a lot of his game at the moment is predicated on very good efficiency, shooting efficiency, but also those blocks. So it doesn't always necessarily translate across to points leagues, but yeah, fantastic value in category leagues. But yeah, that was a little tidbit. Top 50 guy for Jay Huff. So he's on the streamers list, and you think top 50, how is he not on a must add list? But I think it's just the inconsistency of minutes at the moment. Plus, with all the injuries that Memphis are going through at the moment, he's getting more playing time. So sure, you can add him right now, but for me, he's more a streamer level guy. Torian Prince is playing huge minutes for Milwaukee at the moment, and Darwin Ham, I think, loved him from his time at the Lakers, so maybe that's got something to do with it. But Torian Prince is a streamer guy at best.
Yeah, especially with Chris Middleton still sidelined, he's getting those opportunities. Once the team is healthy, that's not really going to happen. He's going to shift back to the bench.
Yep. Next highlighted guy is Kevin Porter Jr. And I wasn't that big on him, but in the last two or three games, he's just playing more and he's finding his shot a little bit more. And I'm not saying that he's going to surpass James Harden by no means, but just keep an eye on him because stranger things have happened. But it's interesting that he is building some momentum here. Streamer, by no means am I saying go and add him, but he could be an ad in 14s or 16s. But for now, just keep an eye on him and possibly just use him as a streamer. But yeah, keep an eye on him is all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think a
I've
lot of people
highlighted.
too. Sorry,
Yeah,
I thought
go
a lot
on.
of people too, they rushed to add him early in the season because they projected him to play big minutes and have good value behind James Harden. And that didn't necessarily happen, but now he's starting to look a lot better. So, streamer.
And James Harden is not a young man either, so I do expect that he will miss a little bit of time, just being old, of course. So Kevin Porter Jr. could have some value as a fantastic injury streamer right there. But yeah, again, just keep an eye out for him. Dorian Finney-Smith, take us through that one.
Yeah, so this is more for a deeper league, which is where I usually have him rostered. He can be up and down, but I like his skill sets. He'll usually give you some points, rebounds, and threes. Yeah, he's not the most flashy player, but this I'm speaking more from like a deeper league perspective here. I think
Mhm.
he's still got solid value. I don't think you're as high as him though as I am,
I'm
at least in
not, but
deeper leagues. Yeah.
I think he's fantastic as a streamer,
Mhm.
particularly on those lower slate days or lower volume days. So yeah, I think he's fine there, but yeah, that's the extent of it for me. I've got TJ McConnell here. I haven't highlighted him, but TJ McConnell, I think I picked him up in a couple of leagues just because I needed to stream in some assists. And with Andrew Nembhard out for a little bit of time, I think TJ McConnell still is the main backup to Tyrese Halliburton. I think he can provide some nice, efficient assists. And of course, his field goal percentage is just unreal for a guard. So, yeah, very unique player there. I've highlighted Neemias Quetta of Boston. Now, he's playing as a backup center, but of course, this week, well, not of course, but I'm letting you know, this week Boston have a back to back. So he's playing ahead of Luke Cornett. No, Luke Cornett missed a game or two, and Quetta came in, put up some really nice rebound numbers and just decent value off the pine.
Mhm.
Again, streamer level guy. If you need the big man stats, I think he's someone that you can turn to.
Yeah, his value is a little bit tied up with Al Horford's availability, but like you mentioned, Boston does have that back to back this week, so Horford will be missing out one of those games.
Yeah, and it would just be interesting to see the dynamic between Quetta and Luke Cornett, who does get that main backup role, or who starts ahead, or who starts when Al Horford sits the back to back.
Mhm.
And the final one that we have highlighted is Keon Ellis. Now, this again is related to injury, and this is Malik Monk. So I'm not exactly sure how long he's going to miss, but if Malik Monk does miss some time, I think Keon Ellis does have a little bit of value here. Not so much as Kevin Herter, but
Mhm.
Keon Ellis as a nice still streamer, I think he could have some value here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a pathway to minutes if Monk is out, and we just got to keep an eye on what the injury is in the timeline.
Absolutely. Now, that is a wrap. Thank you so much, Carla. Did you have any final words?
Yeah, final words. We're recording our last show next, so make sure to check out the injuries and the schedule for week 4 as well.
Absolutely. It's 11:30 p.m. my time, so I'm getting a little bit weary and jumbling up my words, but we'll carry on. Thank you so much, guys. That has been our second episode for the evening. So make sure that you follow us on all of our platforms, but of course, like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us at NBA Fantasy Bible, and you'll find Kayla at Kayla_Fonte. And until next time, thank you so much, Kayla. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
See ya.
See ya.